It may look like just another missile, but what you're seeing here is one of the most advanced weapons ever made by the Germans. Not only that, this missile is perhaps one of the ones Zelensky has begged the most to get his hands on. For a long time, Germany forbade sending it to Ukraine. The reason? Fear that in the wrong hands, it could cause such significant damage that it could be the spark to start a conflict of global proportions. But a recent event in Berlin ended up changing everything. And now Ukraine, fortunately, may be very close to getting its hands on this powerful missile. And that is, well, a good reason for the Russians to be worried. But after all, what missile is this? And why do the Ukrainians want it so much? Well, we're talking about the Taurus Kinetic Energy Penetrator Destroyer 350, a weapon that, as we said, is one of the most advanced available in the German arsenal. And because of its unique capabilities, this missile has been the subject of intense debate in Germany and across Europe in recent years. And to understand the reasons behind all this controversy, we need to take a closer look at it. Taurus is an air-to-surface cruise missile of German and Swedish origin, which is currently manufactured by Taurus Systems. In simpler terms, we're talking about a long-range missile that is launched from fighter aircraft. Weighing about 1,400 kilograms and just over 5 meters in length, the Taurus is powered by a turbofan engine that propels it at speeds close to the speed of sound. But what really sets the Taurus apart from other similar missiles is its ability to travel distances greater than 500 kilometers while flying at an altitude of just 35 meters. In practice, this means it is virtually impossible to be detected by enemy radar systems. The missile incorporates stealth technologies and uses a sophisticated navigation system that combines global positioning system, inertial navigation, image-based navigation, and a radar altimeter, which allows it to find its targets accurately even without global positioning system support. This alone is a big advantage, since it's very common in war scenarios for global positioning system signals to be jammed or manipulated by the enemy. But despite all of this being impressive, the real difference with Taurus lies elsewhere. In its warhead. It's not just any warhead, but an intelligence system called Mephisto, which weighs an impressive 480 kilograms. That's a lot. It was specifically designed to penetrate deeply buried or heavily protected targets. The first stage is a smaller charge that creates a hole in the target, while the second stage, the main charge, blows up the target from the inside out. There's no point in me just talking here. It's better for you to see it yourself to understand what I'm talking about. As you can see, this capability makes the Taurus particularly effective against targets like fortified bunkers, underground command posts, bridges, ammunition depots, and even ships in port or at sea. The system behind these powerful detonations is called PIMPF, which can count the layers of material it penetrates and is programmed to cause maximum damage by detonating at the ideal point within those layers. To better understand this missile's capabilities, it's best to compare it to a similar one. Let's take the Scalp, e.g. of French origin. Compared to similar missiles like this one, or even the Storm Shadow, which has already been supplied to Ukraine, the Taurus has a big advantage. mainly in range, which is significantly greater. We're talking about almost double, to be honest, 500 kilometers versus 250. Moreover, the Taurus warhead system is technologically superior. Now that you know more about the Taurus, it's easy to understand why Ukraine is so desperate for it. Since May 2023, Zelensky has formally requested Germany to supply these missiles to strengthen Ukraine's defense capability against Russia. However, this request has turned into one of the biggest political dilemmas in Germany. That's because former German Chancellor Olaf Scholz took a stand against sending these missiles to Ukraine. The reason? For him, using these missiles against Russia could represent a significant escalation of the conflict.
It is a very long-range weapon. This weapon could not be used without the involvement of German soldiers, given the importance of not losing control over the targets. I reject that. Meanwhile,
Ukraine's allies were pushing for Scholz to change his stance. In an interview, Boris Johnson, the former British Prime Minister, made it clear that he was in favor of sending these missiles.
I think that OLAF has done extraordinary things already, but I do think that the towers need to be deployed. And I hope very much that the German government will do that. But also, I think we all need to do more, and that includes the United Kingdom, United States, and France must increase their collaborative efforts, and I am confident they will.
Scholz was even questioned by German parliamentarians about his decision. Let's see. When
it comes to long-range weapon systems, there's no point supplying any weapons that can only be used if German
military members
have to go to Ukraine to do that. This is a line in the sand for me as a German Chancellor, which is why my position is very clear in this case.
I
think it is necessary that when we are supplying weapons, we ensure that there is no involvement of German soldiers in their use.
As you can see, for Scholz, sending these missiles could potentially drag Germany into a direct confrontation with Russia. He even went so far as to say that he does not consider it right to deliver destructive weapons to the deep interior of Russia. His justification was that the Taurus weapon system was so complex that it would require the presence of German soldiers on Ukrainian soil to program the missiles, which would risk directly involving Germany in the conflict with Russia. In addition, there were concerns about the possibility that Ukraine could use the missiles to attack targets inside Russia or the bridge over the Kerch Strait, which connects Russia to the Crimean Peninsula, illegally annexed in 2014. However, military experts disputed these claims. Fabian Hoffmann, a researcher at the University of Oslo, stated that the only reason why German soldiers would be needed on the ground to operate the Taurus is that the Chancellor doesn't trust what Ukraine might do with them. According to him, the Ukrainian army could be independently trained to operate the missiles within 3 to 4 months. This refusal has caused significant tensions between Germany and its allies. In an attempt to get around German resistance, the United Kingdom even proposed sending more Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine in exchange for Germany delivering some of its Taurus missiles, but Berlin rejected this proposal. The debate in Germany did not stop there and intensified even further with an incident that occurred in February 2024, when confidential conversations between German military officials discussing how the Taurus could be delivered to Ukraine and potentially used to attack the Crimean Bridge were intercepted and leaked by Russia. This caused a major diplomatic embarrassment between the countries. Despite this, the pressure on Germany continued to grow alongside the Ukrainian army's need to replenish this type of weaponry, which is in alarmingly short supply.
Across Europe, Boris long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine.
Hoffman estimates that Ukraine has received between 400 and 600 Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles from France and the United Kingdom since the beginning of the war. According to his calculations, by the beginning of this year, Ukraine may have already exhausted its entire stock of these missiles, but a recent event in Germany seems to have revived hope for the Ukrainians. That's because the early elections in Germany this February resulted in a significant political shift that could radically change the course of German policy towards Ukraine. The conservative Christian Democratic Union Party, led by Friedrich Merz, won the elections by a wide margin, while Olaf Scholz's Social Democratic Party suffered a historic defeat, coming in third place, its worst result so far. Friedrich Merz, who is expected to become the next German chancellor, has been a strong critic of Scholz's timid stance towards Ukraine. In previous statements, Merz supported the possibility of transferring the missiles and criticized the restrictions on the range of weapons supplied to Ukraine.
I would like us to tell Putin, be cautious. If you keep bombing civilians and energy infrastructure, hospitals and kindergartens, if this continues tomorrow, we will lift the range restrictions on the weapons that Ukraine already has today. The second step will be the delivery of Taurus missiles. Putin will decide how far to escalate this war.
During a televised debate in February this year, just a few days before the elections, Merz challenged Scholz and stated that the war could have ended sooner if Ukraine had been supported more decisively and with less hesitation. He also expressed a clear view on the need for a strong and prepared Europe, saying, "If Europe wants its security to be preserved in the long term, then it must ensure that Putin, the aggressor in this war, loses and that Ukraine regains its full territorial integrity." In a forceful speech before the elections, Merz directly held Scholz responsible for the situation in Ukraine. "You are personally responsible for this, with your attitude that Ukraine has to fight with one hand tied behind its back. It can't go on like this. If Putin doesn't accept this, then the next step must be taken. He should be told that if he doesn't stop bombing the civilian population in Ukraine within 24 hours, then Taurus cruise missiles must also be delivered by the Federal Republic of Germany to destroy the supply routes that this regime is using to harm and bomb the civilian population in Ukraine." Merz also addressed fear as a factor in decision-making. "In recent weeks, I have been reminded more and more often of the words of the French philosopher Michel Déon, who once said that fear is the mother of all cowardice. Senior Chancellor, it is time for you and also for us to overcome our fear of Putin in order to truly put an end to the atrocities in Ukraine together." After his election victory, MERS reiterated the need to increase support for Ukraine. The first question we have to ask is whether we will continue to support Ukraine so that it can defend itself. In my opinion, we haven't done enough so far. Otherwise, this war wouldn't have lasted 3 years as of tomorrow. At this moment, you might be wondering, okay, but does Germany have the capability to deliver these missiles? Will they make any difference? Well, what I can tell you is that this delivery would have significant strategic implications for the conflict. That's because Germany has about 600 Taurus missiles, of which it's estimated they could supply around 100 without compromising their own defense capability. This would represent a significant increase in Ukraine's cruise missile arsenal. The Ukrainian Air Force would probably mount these missiles on their Sukhoi Su-24 bombers, which have already been modified to carry Western missiles using pylons recovered from retired British Tornado bombers. Interestingly, the German Air Force still operates several dozen Tornadoes, mainly as Taurus launch platforms. And with these missiles equipped, Ukraine would have some important advantages. First, because of its range, the Taurus would penetrate deeper into Russian lines than any other long-range Western missile currently in Ukraine's arsenal, increasing its ability to intimidate the Russians and effectively respond to numerous threats. The missile would be especially effective against the bridge over the Kerch Strait, an important logistical route for Crimea. This bridge has both strategic and symbolic value for Russia, being known as the Achilles heel of Russian logistics. The use of the Taurus could cause irreparable damage, almost certainly eliminating this Russian supply route. Another important point is that since Ukraine started receiving Army Tactical Missile System missiles, Russia has relocated 90% of its aircraft to military bases. Out of the range of these missiles, resulting in a reduction of Russian airstrikes on Ukrainian cities. The Taurus would force Russia to move its military assets even further inland, severely affecting Russia's combat effectiveness in its attacks against Ukraine's infrastructure. Even if Russia moved its air fleets farther away, this would stretch its resources, negatively affecting in-flight refueling, maximum payload, and time on the battlefield, reducing the scale of attacks against Ukraine. Furthermore, Taurus technology would be extremely beneficial for attacking Russia's deeply buried and fortified targets such as bunkers, command posts, production lines, and military bases. Another important point is that Russia has increased its artillery production since the beginning of the invasion, surpassing Western allies in volume. However, Ukraine has already managed to successfully attack several Russian ammunition and production depots, which has reduced Russia's use of artillery, helping Ukraine to contain Russian advances on the front lines. Continuous attacks on Russia's military assets, production facilities, and storage depots using Western long-range weapons like the Taurus would directly target Russia's supply chain, weakening its offensive capabilities. As you can see, the possible delivery of Taurus missiles to Ukraine comes at a time of significant change in European defense policy. With uncertainty about the United States' commitment to European security, especially after the election of Donald Trump, Europe is increasingly aware of the need to take greater responsibility for its own defense. But there's a problem here. With the formation of the new German government still underway, the final decision on supplying Taurus missiles to Ukraine may take weeks or even months. MERS will first need to conclude government formation negotiations with the Social Democrats before having the political capital to approve such a sensitive arms transfer. However, the direction seems clear. The growing pressure from allies, the deteriorating situation in Ukraine, and the change in political leadership in Germany are creating the conditions for a potential delivery of Taurus missiles to Ukraine, possibly in late spring or early summer of 2025. This delivery, if it happens, would not only be a significant development in the ongoing conflict, but also a sign of Europe's continued commitment to security and regional stability in the face of Russian aggression. As Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk pointed out well before leaving for an emergency summit in London, 500 million Europeans are asking 300 million Americans to defend them against 140 million Russians. If you know how to count on yourself. Start trusting yourself, not in isolation, but with an awareness of your own potential. Europe, if there is something we lack today, it's not economic or demographic power, but the belief that we are truly a global force. And you, what do you think about it? Do you think that MERS in charge of Germany is right to send and authorize the use of Taurus missiles by Ukraine? Or do you think this could just make the conflict worse? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you next time.